For every person who is a Catholic and is a citizen of a country, for every person who's a Catholic and an American, they have to ask themselves this question: am I a Catholic American or am I an American Catholic? In other words, does my faith impact everything of my life, including how I live and my politics? Or does my being an American, does my politics critique my faith? What is the most foundational thing in my life? And I'm reminded of that today because we have in the gospel these people coming to Jesus and they're trying to trap him in speech. And they ask him purposely a question that no matter how he answers it, he's trapped. They ask him, is it lawful to pay the census tax to Caesar or not? Now, if he says yes, because Jews were not happy or proud of the fact that they're being oppressed by the Roman Empire, it feels like you're saying you're a traitor to your own Jewish people because we're under their tyranny and you're saying it's okay to pay this tax. If he says no, then they could get him for sedition as being a traitor to the Roman Empire and get him in trouble with Caesar. So the question is, either way he answers it, he'll be in trouble. But of course, Jesus knows what's going on, and he gives an incredible answer. He says, show me the coin that pays the census tax. So they give him the coin. The coin would have looked actually very similar to that coin that you see on the screen there. Just like an American quarter, you have a profile of the president's face. They have a profile of the Caesar's face, and there would have been an inscription on that. And the inscription would have said, Caesar Augustus Tiberius, son of the divine Augustus. And so the point is very simple. Whose image and inscription is on the coin, the Roman coin? They said, it's Caesar's. That's who it is. He said, great. Then give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and render unto God what belongs to God. Now, they would have known that in Genesis chapter 1, God says, let us make man into our image and in our likeness. And so he created man male and female. In other words, whose image and inscription is inscribed on you and I? It's the fact that we're made in God's image and likeness. That we're called imago Dei. We're the image of God. That's who we bear. We are icons of God. We're image bearers of God. That's whose image we have in us. And so the secondary way this is often understood is that Catholics can be faithful citizens, which is true. That's right. But the primary thing, the primary point Jesus is making is that you first and foremost belong to God. You're made by God and for God. No political party, no president can save my soul. Only Jesus can save my soul. He's the one whose inscription and image I'm made in the likeness of. So what is the primary thing in my life? Am I a Catholic and American, or am I an American Catholic? There are people who run pizza parlors in New York. They'll move to Arizona. They'll bring the oven with them, all the ingredients. They will bake the pizza, and it won't taste the same. It's off. I think that's so weird. It's the same ingredients, same oven, same recipe, and it doesn't taste the right way. And do you know what the secret to New York pizza is? It's the water. Wow, well done. So what they do is they found a way to treat Arizona water to make it like the same chemical compounds as New York water. This is true. And then they remake the dough and the pizza with that water, and it tastes perfect. Tastes just like it tastes in New York. In other words, the most important ingredient, the most foundational ingredient that affects all the others is the water. What's the most foundational ingredient of a Catholic's life is their faith. Am I a Catholic American or an American Catholic? Does my faith imbue everything of my life, including my political life? That's the most foundational thing of my life. And that's what God is saying ultimately today. Jesus is saying, your money can belong to Caesar, but your whole life needs to belong to me. Your whole life needs to belong to God because you're made in my image and in my likeness. Now, having said that, we're called to love others made in God's image and likeness. And some years ago, a movie came out called Amistad. And it was about a slave ship that had come from Africa to America. And there's one particularly harrowing scene where they discover, as they look at the inventory in the books, that they have too many people on the boat, and they're not going to make it. So the way to fix that problem is they decide to chain 50 slaves together, and they put a very heavy rock at the end, and they just push the rock off the side of the boat. And so then all these slaves are holding onto the ship as they're being pulled into the Atlantic Ocean. And then they show you a clip where there's this chain of people, 50 long, of these slaves dying who have drowned to death in the Atlantic Ocean. And I remember seeing that movie and seeing other movies about slavery in America. And when I would see movies like that, this conviction would well up in my heart. And I would think, I would have done something. I would have done something. If I had lived in America in that time, I would have known this is the worst evil of our time. This is horrible. We're treating humans like they're objects, like they're chattel, like they're cattle, like they're a piece of property. That's horrible. I would have done something. I would have defended them. I've seen lots of movies about the Holocaust. Schindler's List, The Boy in the Striped Pajamas. You see scenes of people who are told, oh, you're going to take a shower, so we need to take your clothes off, you're going to go into this room. And in that room, they were killed. And I'm thinking to myself, if I had lived then, if I had lived in the 1930s and the 1940s in Germany, I would have done something. I would have stood up for life. I would have said Holocaust is wrong. This is evil, what we're doing to our fellow citizens. But you see, my friends, we don't live in America 200 years ago, and we don't live in Germany in the 1930s and 40s. We live now, here. And every Catholic of every age must ask themselves, what is the greatest evil of our time? The Bible has always a drive to take care of the widow and the orphan. Over and over again in the Old Testament, God says, take care of the widow and take care of the orphan. Why? Because they were the most vulnerable people in the ancient world, widows and orphans. They had no rights. So God would say, if you love me, if you think every human person is made in my image and my likeness, you will defend me, defend widows and defend orphans. Well, the most vulnerable people in our society is undoubtedly the unborn. They're voiceless. They're the most vulnerable people in our culture. And if we believe that each and every human being is made in God's image and likeness, it is our obligation to fight for them, to stand up for them, to fight the greatest evil of our time. Because when we meet the Lord's going to ask us, what did we do about that? Did we have the courage to stand up for life? To say, no, those people are made in God's image and likeness just like me. And friends, this is old. This idea where Nazis called Jews Untermenschen, that's German for subhuman, or they called them life unworthy of life. Yes, they're alive, but look at the Jew. He's subhuman. He's not worthy of life. You can take his life from him, his liberty, his property. We did that in America. So people with dark skin are 3/5 of a human. They're not really human, and therefore they can be bought and sold like cattle. And now we're doing that with the unborn. We're saying, well, they're not born yet, so they're not really human. They're not persons, and therefore we can get rid of them as we see fit. There are lots of life issues, and when we vote, there are things we must consider. Healthcare, immigration, criminal justice, welfare reform, all of these things are not unimportant. But the church says that among Catholics, there can be what's called prudential judgment. In other words, among Catholics of goodwill, they could disagree about what's the best way to deal with healthcare or the best way to deal with immigration in our country. But when it comes to abortion or euthanasia, this is not one of the menu on those things. It is, as the USCCB says, the preeminent priority. It's the most important issue, which is the life issue. And the reason why it's different is for two reasons. Number one, the gravity of it. Since 1973, when abortion was legalized in our country, we've lost over 60 million human beings. The Holocaust took the lives of 10 million people, including 6 million Jews. We've lost over 60 million people. The number is so staggering. If you're born after 1973, a third of your generation is gone due to abortion. Sons and daughters, brothers and sisters, cousins, these people are gone because of abortion. And it occurs about 2,000 times a day in America. We lost 3,000 people in 9/11. We lose 2,000 people a day due to abortion in America. So the gravity of it. And the second thing is the nature of it. Again, these other things are important, but they're prudential judgment. Abortion is what we call an intrinsic evil. It means it can never be justified. Killing innocent human life is always wrong, no matter the circumstance, no matter the motivation. It is always wrong. And for those reasons, the church says it's the preeminent moral and political issue of our time, of what we do to defend life. The Compendium of the Social Doctrine of the Church says this: the right to life, quote, is the first among all rights and the condition for all other rights. It doesn't matter if you have health care if you're not at least born into the world, unless you first have fundamentally the right to life, that you exist. There are lots of ways we can participate in this. Right now, there's occurring what's called the 40 Days for Life. You've probably seen it. It's when people peacefully pray in front of abortion clinics, asking for the conversion of the hearts of those who perform it, those who receive it. We can volunteer at crisis pregnancy centers. We can educate ourselves about the life issue. We can pray for an end to abortion every day. And I just have to say, friends, we're Catholic. We believe God is merciful. If you've lost a child to abortion, lost motherhood, lost fatherhood, I can't say this clearly enough. The desire of Jesus' heart to forgive you, there's no one like Jesus. He's the kindest person I've ever met. There's no one like him. He doesn't work in shame. He just doesn't. He's the kindest person I have ever met. And he loves to forgive the sin of abortion as any sin. We're Catholic. We proclaim life. We proclaim mercy. We proclaim justice. That's who God is. And his image and his inscription is on every human person. And therefore, we have an obligation to defend every human life. One day we're going to die, and we're going to meet the Lord. And he's going to ask us, what did you do about the greatest evil of your time? And we can't say, well, they weren't our sons and daughters. Because God will say, yes, but they were my sons and daughters, which makes them your brothers and sisters, made in the same image and in the same likeness. When we defend life and all that we do, the way we vote, the way we live, then we're rendering unto Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and we're rendering unto God what belongs to God.